Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's Friday, the 12th day of April, 5:06 in the morning. You're listening to O'Connor and Company to get you started the right way, wind up this week, and launch you into a pretty weekend, a nice spring weekend here in your nation's capital. Coming up at 7:05, Eric Shawn, senior correspondent of Fox News Channel. Eric was in the courtroom during O.J.'s trials. O.J. Simpson died yesterday. We're going to talk about that cultural phenomenon. 7:35, Diana Mayhew from the National Cherry Blossom Festival, because this beautiful weekend we'll also see the Cherry Blossom Parade in the end of the festival. At 8:05, North Dakota Governor and former presidential candidate Doug Burgum. And at 8:35, Brett Baer, Fox News Channel. Is he like live from Augusta? Is he going to be on the fairway? No, he didn't get to go to the Masters this year? That's sad. Oh. I am Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Happy Friday, Larry.
It is Good
morning, everybody.
Even though we got some showers today, it's going to taper off by the end of the afternoon, and then tomorrow's going to be sunny and breezy. Sunday is looking like a magnificent early June day. It's going to be
wonderful.
Going to be fantastic. So we're going to get into all of that. And while everyone is out thinking about their weekend, enjoying the great outdoors, maybe going on a hike, maybe even, if you got a kayak or something, getting out on the Chesapeake because it's going to be so lovely. Over on Capitol Hill, members of the House of Representatives will be debating. And they're going to be debating specifically the option to expand what's called Section 702 of FISA for 2 more years. Expand, extend, and renew FISA. And FISA, of course, is the warrantless ability to spy on American citizens by the FBI. This was all set up during the post 9/11 era, where there were grave concerns about dysfunction within the intelligence community and the inability for the FBI and the CIA to share information. There was a whole revamping of the way we gathered intelligence and shared intelligence. We created the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to oversee all the various spying agencies that our country feels is necessary to prevent such things from happening. And the whole idea was that there may be incidental or even deliberate collection of personal communications from American citizens with people from other countries. But the reason for the collection of that data and the analytics on that data was, again, to prevent and preempt another possible catastrophic terrorist attack. Sadly, though, I feel like I needed to lay all of that out because the only reason, Patrice, people know the word FISA right now, the reason that it is sort of top of mind or present in our conscience is because FISA was abused. FISA was abused for political purposes. A FISA warrant was drawn on Carter Page, who was a tangential volunteer and advisor on the Trump campaign. And through that illegally obtained FISA warrant, and that is, there is no hyperbole there, that FISA warrant was illegally obtained, and the court that gave the FISA warrant was lied to. We know that. Those are facts.
Yes.
But by obtaining that, James Comey's FBI was able to spy on pretty much everybody involved in the Trump campaign. Results of data collection from various FISA warrants, whether it was Carter Page or whether it was the ambassador to Russia, who was talking to incoming National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn, results of that data gathering was then illegally leaked to the media, the Washington Post, and other press agencies. No one has ever been prosecuted for the illegal leaks of the FISA spy data that was gathered by our American agencies and then leaked for political purposes. No one has ever been punished for that. No reforms have been put in place to rectify these political abuses that were utilized to harm Donald Trump and, more importantly, the American people who voted for him.
Yes.
And now the same agencies that did all of that are screaming bloody murder. The Republicans in the House are saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't renew this thing. Maybe we should go back to the good old days where if you want to spy on someone, you get a freaking warrant. And that's where we are. Today they're going to debate it again because it did not go through. It appears that Speaker Mike Johnson has sort of changed his position on this. He used to be on the Judiciary Committee. He was highly skeptical of FISA. Now he's trying to push it through. We'll let you know why he's doing that because he spoke for himself yesterday. But those who are opposing just a rubber stamp approval of the current FISA regime is basically saying a very simple thing, which I just repeated. Get a warrant. Just get a warrant. That's it. Why is that so hard?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, from those who support the bill passing, and we're pretty upset about what happened on Wednesday afternoon. They're taking the position that a lot of the reform that hardliners who blocked it from passing, their position is, well, there are reforms in the bill that would actually address some of those concerns, and those who are opposed to the process were really opposed that their amendments were not being able to be debated. So it seems like this is less about substance it's less about substance and more about process. And if in that case, I can actually see where sometimes. The question is, does tanking something for it to become the best make sense compared to actually getting something that's good across the finish line?
Well,
and maybe that's where this is breaking down. And maybe that's why you're seeing Speaker Johnson say, okay, well, maybe I just need to get something good passed rather than something perfect passed.
I think, listen, the one lesson of this Republican Congress, which has now seen two different speakerships in just a year, with their very slim one-vote majority now, I think true vote majority. The one lesson here is that the members of the House of Representatives and the Republican majority are no longer in the business of just rubber stamping what leadership hands them. When they're handed something and they say, just vote for it, and the arms are being twisted, and they're like, no, I'm not just going to vote for it because you told me to vote for it. Not if I don't like it, and not if you didn't include us in the conversation. Listen, if anybody wonders who's on the right side of this FISA thing, just read how the media is reporting it. All right, here's USA Today. Headline, spurred by Donald Trump, House Republicans descend into chaos after right-wing lawmakers derail vote. I mean, I see that headline as like, okay, well, I know whose side I'm on. Listen to how they write this. Just days after returning from a 2-week recess, right-wing fury spurred on by former President Donald Trump, brought the House to a standstill in a significant blow to House Speaker Mike Johnson as he grapples with a threat to his leadership post. 19 House Republicans shot down a procedural step known as a rule vote in the House on a controversial spying law that has renewed GOP infighting. The move effectively froze the House on the left and left the legislation in a state of limbo. Where things actually stand on this, without all of the hyperbole from USA Today, is that there was a vote last night, 7:45 p.m. in the Rules Committee. They are trying to re-up the FISA authorization bill for the floor. This was the second time they tried to do that. The House Rules Committee advanced the rule to set up a debate on the reauthorization of FISA. It was an 8-4 vote. The vote on the rule will likely take place this morning. If the rule passes, that a vote on the final passage could take place later in the day. And you're right, Patrice, because of all of the statements and the pushback and the defiance, the hope here is that whatever emerges is going to be an improvement from where we were earlier this week, and certainly an improvement from where we were a year ago when the FISA rulings have been so abused, especially for political purposes. I have a little bit more to say about this and about how the Biden administration and the FBI has no moral ground to stand on when they claim that Republicans are endangering America's national security by doing this. I'll lay that out for you a little bit more in just a moment. But first, it's 5:15, WMAL, traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
When I was a member of the Judiciary, I saw all the abuses of the FBI, the terrible abuses over and over and over, the hundreds of thousands of abuses. And then when I became Speaker, I went to the SCIF and got the confidential briefing from sort of the other perspective on that to understand the necessity of Section 702 of FISA and how important it is for national security. And it gave me a different perspective. So I encourage all the members to go to the classified briefing and hear all that and see it so they can evaluate the situation for themselves. And I think Some opinions have changed both ways, but that's part of the process. You got to be fully informed.
Have you been
All right, so that's Speaker Johnson explaining that when he was a member of the Judiciary Committee, he saw abuses of the FBI. He called them hundreds of thousands of abuses by the FBI on this warrantless spying ability that they've had, all under the guise of protecting us from a national security nightmare. He says, then I became Speaker, I got confidential briefings, and I understand how important this is for national security. Okay, so again, this is part of that whole, well, you plebeians might not understand how important this stuff is, but we anointed few who get to see exactly how bad it is, we know that it's important, so just shut your mouths and let us do our job. Fine.
That is not what I read into it.
That's what I read into it.
I read into it. Listen, there's always going to be a tension between security and civil, and your civil rights, in terms of your privacy rights. Which trumps the other in any given situation? I can't tell you which should. Absolutely, we want the privacy of Americans to be respected, but we also recognize that at the southern border we have terrorists coming through, and so there has to be tools that the federal government is able to use to track those folks down. But that's how I read that.
Well, I hear you, but I don't see how the two are related to each other. But you're right about this. On the exact same day that we're being told that we need to acquiesce our constitutional rights and allow FISA to be renewed, even though we know for a fact in the Speaker's own mind that the FBI has abused it hundreds of thousands of times against American citizens in an attempt to cripple not just the Trump campaign, but the Trump presidency, which, by the way, is election interference and also subverting the will of the American people. At the exact same day we were hearing that and the FBI and the Biden administration screaming that Republicans don't care about national security because we are challenging whether the FISA 702 provision should be renewed, we also got this yesterday, same day, NBC News.
Tonight, an alarming development in the border crisis. Among the record number of migrants crossing the southern border was a member of an Afghan terror organization who was released into the U.S. by border agents, according to U.S. officials. 48-year-old Mohammed Harwin illegally crossed into California in March of last year. His name is on a U.S. terror watch list, identifying him as a member of HIG, a terror group that's killed Americans in Afghanistan. Border agents suspected he was on the watch list at the time of his apprehension, but lacked corroborating information, according to U.S. officials.
So in other words,
yikes.
A person on the terror watch list was allowed into the country by the Biden administration through the porous border. They said they didn't have enough corroborating information to keep him from coming in, which actually they don't need corroborating. They can keep anyone they want from coming into this country.
Absolutely they can. But
what did they do? They deferred to his civil rights, which are non-existent because he is not a U.S. citizen. And so a non-citizen illegal immigrant in this country who is on the terror watch list and a member of a terrorist organization, the Biden administration's national security apparatus through the Border Patrol acquiesced to his non-existent constitutional rights, yet at the same time they're arguing that all of us should voluntarily give up our constitutional rights because they want to make sure that a terrorist like this guy isn't going to do something bad in this country. I'm sorry. How about this, FBI? How about this, Biden administration? You want FISA? How about as a good faith gesture to tell us that you're really serious about this? How about you just shut down the border today? You can do it.
We can agree with that.
You can do it. Good. How about you give us that good faith signal, that symbol, and then maybe we can have this conversation. But until you do, pardon me for being skeptical.
Well, listen, absolutely, shut down the border. But let's also not forget that those Republicans, those conservatives who have understandable concerns about the FISA process being abused and did not want to renew this bill, Section 702, they're hitching their wagons with the likes of Rashida Tlaib, Jerry Nadler, Pramila Jayapal, organizations like the ACLU, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and Muslim advocates, folks who probably would more than be happy to defend this person who came in as a terrorist from the southern border. So we got to. I mean, I understand the privacy concerns here, and I share them. But also think about who you're who you're voting with. They voted with Democrats to tank this bill earlier this week. So what are the Democrats
Patrice,
trying to do?
This goes well beyond privacy concerns. This is tools, spying tools that have been used as political weapons against the American people.
I understand.
That's not a privacy concern. That when this thing was debated post 9/11, and there were like one or two people that stood up and said this could be a problem, Ron Paul being one of them, and I remember at the time making fun of him, okay? I was on the side as we got to do whatever we can to keep another 9/11 from happening. I get it. And there were very few voices in this town, but they were there that said this is the kind of power that the federal government will use against us. And we said, oh, you're crazy, sit down. Well, now we know they have used it against us. And we are the crazy ones now. If we don't recognize that, put a pause button on this and say, it's incumbent on you to prove to me that you're not going to abuse it again. And it's incumbent on me to make sure that there are guardrails and weapons in place to keep you from abusing it again. Because can I remind you that the abuse that we all know about from the Trump campaign, from James Comey, from the Steele dossier and Hillary Clinton, Carter Page, all of these people whose lives were ruined, not one person was punished. Not one person has been punished. Yeah. So this goes well beyond privacy. Listen, the debate that Patrice and I are having right now is the same debate that is going on in the House this morning when they reconvene, and a debate that all of us Americans should be having, and we'll continue to have it later this morning. It's 5:24.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
5:36 now. It's Friday, and we're winding up the week and sending you into a beautiful weekend the right way, the only way, on O'Connor and Company, with news, information, analysis, and, well, a bit of fun. Coming up at 7:05, Eric Shawn from Fox News Channel will reflect on the death of O.J. Simpson as he was in the courtroom during the trials back in the glorious middle 90s. It's 7:35, Diana Mayhew from the National Cherry Blossom Festival for the parade this weekend. 8:05, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. He has fantastic eyebrows. And then at 8:35, Brett Baer, Fox News Channel, will be reporting live from the 9th green in Augusta.
You know, you're right about Doug Burgum's eyebrows. They're up there with Tom Selleck's eyebrows.
No, they're more unkempt. I think Tom at least has some.
Well, he has makeup artists who
some
takes
grooming
care of that,
going on. Yeah, I mean, my issue with Burgum's eyebrows when they're great, but I just want to get in there with clippers and some tweezers.
Waxing, no, not clippers.
You want to go for the full.
Are you kidding me? Absolutely.
What about the thread? What's the threading thing?
I used to do threading at one point. Yeah. It's actually less painful than waxing.
It's a weird thing where they tie a thread around your.
No, they don't tie a thread around every. No, they take threads and then they. It's a lot of symmetry, actually.
Is it?
You can Google it and see how it's done, but
I'll get right on that. I have news for everybody who wants to be politically correct and woke when they're talking to a person who has Latin, Hispanic, or some level of Spanish origins of some type. I know that you've been really vexed over the fact that by using the phrase Latino, you are triggering all of the women that you're addressing because Latino is obviously a masculine gender of the Latin derivative, right? And see, in that language, I believe it's all the words or almost all the words have a default male gender. It's just the way the Romance languages were set up originally.
Yes.
Unless you're specifying. So in other words, you would call a male person of Hispanic origin a Latino. You would call a female person of Hispanic origin a Latina, but if you're talking about the entire group as a whole, you would default to the male gender. That's just the rules of the language. Yes.
In Italian, you would say a bambino is a little boy,
right.
A bambina is a little girl, and bambini, masculine, multiple masculine, plural, exactly. Right. I studied Latin and I studied Italian, so I'm very familiar with it.
By the way, English sort of is like this too. If you look at like the King James Bible, when
Yes.
all of humanity is referred to, it is often utilized, his. Everyone should do what he thinks, right? Or
Yes.
everyone to his own. But it
Yes.
meant to include women as well. It just defaults to them.
Yes.
But of course, that won't do. That won't do.
That's not inclusive,
today.
Larry.
It isn't. In fact, it's beyond inclusive. It's offensive, triggering, and so remember they tried to push Latinx on us.
That just sounds weird.
They
Latinx.
replaced the O and the A with an X, and people hated it. Most importantly, Latinos hated it.
They didn't even know about it to even hate it. And when they did, they hated it.
When they
did
heard it, they're like,
understand
"What the hell are you talking about?"
Exactly.
And then it was explained, and it was like, "Well, you're an idiot. We don't use it."
Exactly.
Well, now according to Axios, Latinx is going away finally. You're welcome. We did that. But the sentiment behind the language police and the woke, gender-neutral totalitarians, their spirit is still there, and now they're trying to push a new one. Are you ready?
Okay.
Replace the X in Latinx with an E. And I believe it's
Wait,
pronounced Latine or Latine. I'm guessing it's Latine. It's a gender-neutral way to describe or refer to people with Latino origins. Wait, why would Axios say Latino origins? It's surging in popularity over terms like Latinx. Now, I'll talk about the surging in popularity in a moment, but I have a couple of problems with this. First of all, Latine sounds like latrine, so I don't know why anyone would want to be associated with a latrine.
Latinx kind of sounded like tinker, tinkle.
That's right. That didn't work either. Also, if you think about it, Latine with the E at the end is actually an English way of using the alphabet. There are very few words that have a silent E at the end in Spanish language. In fact, I don't think there are any. The silent E at the end of a word is an English derivative. It's not.
That's interesting.
It's not a Spanish derivative. So leave it to white English-speaking elitists to come up with the proper way that a Latino person should be referred to. How about this? How about we let them call themselves whatever they want? They want Latino, let them keep with Latino.
Well, that's exactly right. You could also say Latin as a Latin person. But really, this is more than just vocabulary and language. It is really about control and division, frankly. DEI, the equity in division, this whole mindset about inclusion, division, and all of that, it is really about dividing people into as many subcategories as possible to support the idea that the more you can divide people, you can put them against each other by claiming one is a victim and one is an oppressor.
Sure.
And then you can exploit that for political and monetary reasons. That is all that, like, the GLAAD organization is driving this. I mean, this is not about actually helping anybody.
Well, and the fact that the GLAAD organization, which is not a Latino or Hispanic rights organization, it's a gay and lesbian organization, right? This is really, again, this is like a gay warping gender. They don't want gender to be even acknowledged in any way whatsoever, except when they use gender awareness to convince young children to mutilate their bodies. That's the only time we should ever focus on gender. The majority, 80% of Latinos and Hispanics want to use Latino. That's what they want, okay? But here's the best part, Latine, which, by the way, I guess the actual pronunciation is Latine. So it's not a silent E. Latine.
Yeah, that's not going to go anywhere.
Not Latino, not Latina. It's Latine, which, by the way, sounds feminine. But here's the best part, because I told you that it's the popularity is surging according to Axios. Latine, a gender-neutral way to describe or refer to people with Latino origins, is surging in popularity over terms like Latinx. But where is it surging? Get ready. Is it in the barrio? Is it at soccer games? Is it at your favorite Mexican restaurant? No. The popularity is surging on university campuses, museums, and among researchers and media. That's where it's popular.
So
yes.
the elites, obviously. Well, this is interesting. So Congresswoman Maria Salazar of Florida, Republican, she actually introduced a bill last year to ban the use of Latinx. And so let's hope that Congresswoman Salazar, maybe I should tweet at her office, that she gets on this right away. Let us ban Latina.
Latine.
Latina. Is that how you pronounce it?
I think so.
Let's ensure, we don't need this, and it's sad that you'd even have to introduce legislation to do something like this, and it's very much a messaging bill, but we need to message very loud and vociferously that this is divisive, that it is not helpful, and certainly that it is driving the Hispanics away from the Democratic Party.
I think
and
that might be the
politics
biggest
and
problem.
Right to Republicans.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Or
either way,
conservatives.
whatever we end up with, the one thing that is obvious from this entire movement is Latinx is dead and buried.
Latinx.
Okay.
Latinx is what Joe Biden used to call it. 5:51 now as we charge through our Friday morning, and we have an update on the Francis Scott Key Bridge. As you know, we've been beating the drum here on this program that every single time a politician talks about the money used to rebuild the bridge, they should begin the conversation with, the shipping company is responsible for this. They are going to pay for it. Their insurance companies are going to pay for it. We will not rest until we get every penny from the shipping company. And then they can go on and say that we need state and federal funding to get the project done now, because obviously it's going to take quite a bit of time to get that money from the shipping company. But for some reason, the first part of that statement seems to be the one that's forgotten, Patrice. The only thing we're hearing is, here I am with my blank check. Let's write the check and build the bridge. Representative Andy Harris of Maryland has joined his Democrat colleagues to move a bill that would have federal funding to help build this bridge and get it done so Baltimore and the entire eastern seaboard can get back to normal functions again. But he does say what I was hoping he would say, which is, we got to get the shipping company. They're responsible for this, and we need to get that money from them. Many other Republicans in the House joined Andy Harris in that sentiment, although there are some members of the House who are like, hey, let's not write one federal check until we get the money from the shipping company. I think that that's unrealistic. I recognize the money has to be spent. We got to get it built because this is going to be litigated.
Absolutely.
But we need to fight that. We need to fight that litigation, and we need to keep saying it over and over again.
Well, so it's a matter of it would be a reimbursement process where the company is reimbursing the federal taxpayer for the money that's being dispersed.
Which is oftentimes what happens in a situation like this. Somebody drives into your house. You don't just wait for the money from you have to get it done, and then you get reimbursed.
And then you get reimbursed, which is understandable. And it's a good show of faith that kind of language would be part of the conversation. The idea of reimbursement. I think the other piece of this is, I guess there's some concern that because the Federal Highway Administration's Emergency Relief Fund, which provides money for states that need to repair or reconstruct roadways after disasters, it is already, let's just say that there's a backlog right now, and there's certainly not enough money. There's a backlog of $2.1 billion worth of projects and less than $1 billion on hand to actually pay those out. And I can imagine the cost of rebuilding the Francis Scott Key Bridge would certainly exceed what the Federal Highway Administration has. So,
that budget is for regular upkeep and infrastructure maintenance. This is a complete rebuilding effort after a disaster, so it's understandable it needs to stand alone.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, there are huge economic impacts here when you consider all of the commerce that goes through that area, and so 100%. It's important to rebuild.
By the way, crews that have been working on clearing out the channel have now successfully opened a second temporary channel, and they're working on a third channel as well.
That's very good.
It's 5:54.